Okay. I'm not sure if you were around in 2020. We had Bethany, this is Bethany Mazereeuw, by the way, from the company Symplicated. And she has a variety of other things that she does. But we had her via Zoom, I believe it was, in 2020 during, remember those COVID days? Or 2021? Okay. And at that time, she spoke on a topic called Swedish death cleaning. And so there's always interesting things that come out of a topic. And today I don't think is anything less than that. So Bethany, we're so glad to have you here again. And we look forward to what you are about to present. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you sure you want to applaud already? I haven't even heard anything yet. I do remember, so 2021, it was April 1st, 2021, and we were on Zoom together. I don't know if you remember all those Zoom squares, and that's how I got to know you first. So I'm glad to be back here in person, to be able to talk to you about generations and our stuff. So this is something that holds us back. We hear this all the time when we're doing work with clients. Why don't my kids want my stuff? It can be kind of disappointing, maybe even heartbreaking if you've hung on to things for them. So we're going to talk today a little bit about first decluttering and what is it, why would we want to do it? And then we're going to talk about the different generations and how each generation was shaped by the life events, the world events. And then we're going to talk about what we can do when our kids don't want our stuff. All right, so let's go. If we're empty nesters, why are we storing all the kids' stuff in our unit? Hopefully you don't have a storage unit dedicated to all your kids' stuff. You might. There's no judgment. Hopefully you don't. But it could sound a little different. It could be like, I've got a room full of things for one of my kids, or I've got a closet, or there are things in the crawl space or the attic that are for my kids. I'm saving these things for my kids, and we're fairly sure that they're going to want them, and then we find out they maybe don't want them. And what do we do? All right, so first of all, I'm going to back up a little bit. So, Symplicated, we started, my husband and I, this is my husband Greg on the picture, we started Symplicated in 2019 because we discovered the joy of decluttering our own things and found that this was something that could really help other people too. It helps them to just get a little bit of freedom when they have a bit less stuff. There's lots of reasons for that. Everybody's amount of stuff and their tolerance for the amount of stuff is different. So it's not saying you need to have just 2 plates and 2 forks and 2 knives and then you will be happy. It's not about that. It's about, is your stuff owning you? When you look around your home, is it challenging? Is it thinking about all the things you need to do with the stuff? Is it feeling a little crowded or a little overwhelming? Then you know maybe it's time to reduce things. Or maybe you're thinking about moving and going somewhere a little bit smaller, more manageable. And then you realize you can't take it all with you because the new place is smaller. So those are some of the reasons that we help people declutter. And then the day that I talked to you last, April 1st, 2021, was the day we purchased Seniors Move. And so that was a company it was run by Donna and Rhonda, 2 amazing Christian women that took it over in 2010. Seniors Move was actually started in 2005 by a woman named Bryn Berry. And so 2010, Donna and Rhonda bought it, and then we met them during the, just before the pandemic, about a month before the pandemic hit this area. We met with them and talked about, they were doing similar things to what we were doing. How might we work together? We weren't sure, but we kind of came away from that conversation and thought, wow, and I thought those are really amazing, godly women. I'd like to just hang out with them more. And then they thought the same about my husband and I, and so we weren't sure how we were going to work together. And then the pandemic happened, and by the fall of 2020, Donna said, I've made a decision, I'm going to be retiring and moving to Ottawa. Would you like to buy Seniors Move? Because we like the way you do things, we'd like you to be the ones to take care of it next. And so we were enamored with that. We did pray about it quite a bit, and then we ended up buying it in April of 2021, and we haven't looked back since. So, what do we do with the stuff we declutter from people's homes? So when they are moving, we often do some decluttering with them because they can't take it all. So these are some of the charities where we are able to give their things to have their sort of legacy continue, right? So they've done the hard work of releasing those things. We want them to go into the community and bless other people. So there is nothing wrong with Value Village. It's a for-profit organization, and it will keep going and it serves a need in our community. But we want your donations to go to places that mean something. They do good work in the community, they do good work globally. I'm sure you're familiar with MCC and all of the work that they do here and overseas. Some of these other ones, if you don't know them, so Worth a Second Look is part of the Working Center, and The Perfect Find supports Christian education. That's in the south end of Kitchener. Redemption Prison Ministry is in Cambridge, so if we're doing a job in Cambridge, we may work with them. Indwell is, how many people know what Indwell is? Not too many, so I'll just give you a rundown on them. So they create housing for homeless. They take old buildings and repurpose it. So they just last year, they turned St. Mark's Church down by Grand River Hospital into housing units. It's an amazing space. It was part of Doors Open Waterloo Region this past fall. If it ever is again, I would encourage you to go and have a look at what they've done there. That was my grandparents' church. They went there. So I got to go in, and I remembered going with them. We had our own church, but we went with them on Christmas Eve, and so I remembered, the sanctuary and then seeing what they've done and make that into a beautiful common area for people. Indwell's not a place that you can donate your things to directly, but we have a partnership with them in the background. And so when people have downsized and moved, we've helped them move into, say, a retirement home or an apartment. They've often been able to give furniture, and we've been able to furnish 3 apartments in that building for Indwell, which helps when you're debating whether to get rid of things or not, and you know it can go to help like that. It makes it easier to let go. We often say, are you ready to let this go and bless somebody else now? So that's some of the places where your things will go if you're working with us. Okay, so let's talk about decluttering, or as I like to call it, right sizing. So when you're going to a smaller place, you may need to do some right sizing because the place itself is smaller. But you may also want to right size where you are now, because if you're feeling like, hey, the closets are getting a little full, or I'm not really sure what's in that attic anymore because we've just been shoving things in there for 30 years. It might be time to say, okay, let's get to know those things again and bring them out, have a look at them, and see, do we need this or not? And we're going to right size for where you are now. Okay, so why would we want to do this? You want to do it now while you have time and energy to do it. I'm sorry to say, there's a time that's coming when you may not have the mobility, you may not have the energy, you may not have the time to do it yourself. So, and that means that gets put on someone else. Perhaps, children in your family, or niece or nephew, or friends, they have to then do that work of downsizing or right sizing for you. And then you don't have the ability to make the decisions either. They're doing it for you. And it's kind of a burden on them. That was my last talk when we talked about Swedish death cleaning. It was about not leaving this for someone else to do. You get the joy of living with less now. So when we first started Symplicated, this was kind of a common situation where, our church would be sponsoring a refugee family to come and start their lives over in Canada. Okay, so the call would go out. They need sheets, they need towels, they need kitchen utensils, whatever it is. We would look around our house, and lo and behold, we would find extra almost every single time. It's like, oh, well, if somebody else needs this, they need it more than we do. We don't need 7 pairs of sheets. I don't know if that's how many we had, and no judgment if you have 7 pairs of sheets or sets of sheets. But we didn't need that many, right? So we figured out, yeah, we can give this away. And so we loved that feeling of being able to share what we had. But then we come back into our house and we look in the linen closet and we're like, oh, this is nice. I don't have to worry about all these extra sheets. Because you know how, sheets in particular, they go kind of smelly if you're not using them. Even if they're clean and you put them away. I don't know why that is. They get a bit of a smell and then you want to wash them again before you put them on your bed. It's a lot to think about, a lot to worry about. So we have one pair of sheets now. So we wash them and we put them right back on the bed. There's nowhere to store them. We don't have to worry about storing them. We don't have to worry about that smell. We don't have to worry about how to fold a fitted sheet. I have watched YouTube videos and if you can fold a fitted sheet, my hat is off to you. I've never figured this out, and I'm 52. So you get the joy of living with less now. You have more space. There's that sense of peace and calm. So when we open that linen cupboard and it's not like stuff is not falling out on us, we go, feels good. You have more energy and time. The more energy and time is because you're not worried about maintaining the stuff, putting batteries in the stuff, dusting the stuff, repairing the stuff, looking after the stuff, right? When you have a little bit less, you have more time. The more money surprises people because they're like, well, I bought this thing, so if I give it away for free, how do I get more money? What you're doing when you give things away and you live with less is you're building your contentment. You're exercising that contentment muscle. So then when you are shopping, so let's take the example of maybe sweaters. So you have a drawer, you have sweaters, you know you've done the decluttering work. So the sweaters that are left are the ones that you love, that matter to you, that look good on you. You have confidence when you wear them, they're not too itchy, they're the right color, whatever. So now you go to the store and you see there's a sweater on sale. I like that sweater. Do I need that sweater? I'm going to think twice about that sweater because I know all my sweaters at home are ones that work well for me and I like them. So then you may not bring that new sweater home. And if you do, my suggestion is that you know which sweater is leaving the drawer to make room for the new one. Okay. And you avoid burdening someone else. So that was that Swedish death cleaning talk. So nobody else has to do this work for you. Okay, Joshua Becker. He was a pastor, and don't know if he's still pastoring. He does write really great books about decluttering and living with less. So he says, decluttering now and living simply makes it easier for your loved ones. Right? So your loved ones are not worried about all the stuff that you have, and someday this is going to be their problem. So The More of Less is one of his books. It's a small little book. You can get it at the library. It's a great read. Okay, so what does the Bible have to say about living with less? Luke 12:15 says, one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Okay, so the world would like to tell you otherwise, right? The world would like to tell you, you need this thing. I personally like to do puzzles. And lately in my social media feed, because I clicked on one picture of a puzzle board that has the nice little drawers and it turns around, and because I clicked on one, Instagram, Facebook, they are telling me I need this puzzle board. It's on my feed. It's unbelievable, right? The algorithms, how they work. So the world would like to tell me that having a puzzle board will make my life better, easier, more fun, whatever it is. And now I have to resist that. So, and then Matthew 6, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So, and this is a good reminder for us, right? When we are doing work of decluttering, okay, do these things define me? Do these things tell me what I'm worth? No. My treasure's in heaven, right? So, and we'll talk a little bit later about our legacy and relationships that we have. That's more valuable and speaks more to where we're going than any of the stuff does. because the stuff, like, you've heard this, you can't take it with you,
Yeah.
right? Okay, one day, son, all this will be yours.
Oh, yay.
We can't really see the son's face in this comic, but I imagine he's not super thrilled with this concept, right? Why not? It's a lot of stuff. These might not be just some carefully selected items that when his father saw them, he thought, this, my son would love this. Okay. This is more about, I think he might like this someday. Chuck it in the garage. And now the garage is overflowing. Right? Okay, so what do you do when you've offered a gift to someone and they don't want it? I'm just going to consult my notes here. So what about that garage full of stuff? And you're like, I've put this all aside for you, and now they don't want it. So we're going to use the generations to look at perhaps why to help us. These are just some of the generations that we have. So the silent generation, they'd be probably about 99 or 100 today, the youngest of them. So I'm not really going to touch on them. But they were born between 1925 and 1945. Baby boomers, 1945 to 1965. Sometimes we hear 1946 to 1964. It's thereabouts, right? Generation X, 1965 to 1980, roughly. Millennials, 1980 to 1995. Gen Z, 1995 to 2010. And then Gen Alpha. There's a fun little quiz online somewhere that you can take to see if you can decipher what Gen Alpha says, some of the terms that they use. I'm not going to talk about them because they're not maybe quite old enough yet to be involved in this process when we're thinking about it. Okay, so the silent generation. So this is where I am going to consult my notes a little bit. So they were born between 1928 and 1945, shaped by the Great Depression and World War II. Okay, so these were, if you were in this generation, this is part of what shaped your upbringing. The general view of possessions was what? Waste not, want not. Right? So we don't waste anything because we might need that someday. And there's good reason that that mantra came from that generation. So if you were in this generation, you may have experienced high unemployment, drought, rationing, and so you grew up purchasing few items, and you purchased things that were built to last. You lived frugally because you had to, and if you could save things, you did, right? So this is just what made sense. One of my nanas, one of my grandmothers, I remember her saving milk bags, and maybe you do this too. They are good, strong bags. If they could hold milk, they could hold a lot of other things. So she would wash them out and use them again. Yeah.
String.
And string.
String. Yeah.
String, right. So
There was a thing hanging on the wall. My sister found one, it's antique now, and this ball of strings in here, and you pull it down, but there are knots all the way, so it's...
right, okay, so reusing string, winding it around so that you can reuse it, right? That made sense. That made a lot of sense. It might not make as much sense today. So, for people in this generation, they might now be facing right-sizing or downsizing, and that can be difficult, can be painful. Physically it can be painful, emotionally it can be painful, and it's also more challenging if you've lived in the same home for a long, long time. I think, so people that we move, I think the new record that we have is 55 years, that someone had been in their home for 55 years, the same home, so. So this generation, though, does have some advantages over other generations because they already know how to live minimally and how to live simply, right? So they may want to remember those lessons that they learned about living simply and see if they could live with a little bit less. And a life unburdened by excess possessions is always going to make them their remaining years more calm and peaceful, more rewarding. All right, so. Baby boomers. Who's a boomer? Yeah. You guys are the most famous generation by name. So, if you were born between 46 and 64, or about thereabouts, then you're a boomer. So, boomers were born immediately after World War II. So they grew up in a world that was pretty different from the silent generation that came before them. So there was, first of all, a house shortage due to all the returning servicemen and women, and usually there were high birth rates happening at the same time. So there was this sudden expansion of housing into suburbs. The building just happened on the outskirts, right? So the boomers were kind of the first generation to just en masse move into suburbs. And that was an era of prosperity. So families became dual income, sometimes for the first time, and discretionary income reached a new high, and there was all this post-war optimism. It was inspired by stability, opportunity, and boomers became consumers of the first order. So living with less or living minimally, if you're a boomer, it might not come very naturally to you. But you might be at the position now, in the position where you're starting to question, like, does all this stuff make me happier? Do I need all this? Perhaps now you're thinking about the value of experiences over possessions. And if so, I'd say, yeah, keep going, you're on the right track. Your generation brought us a great deal of progressive change. And I would say, if this feels daunting to you to live with less, you're capable of change. Your whole generation taught us how to change. All right. Generation X, that's my generation. So born between 65 and 1980, oh, we have such a reputation. Cynical, individualistic, self-absorbed, yeah. So we have grown up in families of working parents that had a lot of disposable income, but not much time or energy to be in the home with the kids necessarily. So who's heard that term, latchkey kids? Yeah, it kind of came from this generation, right? So kids would let themselves in the house after school because the parents were working. And so sometimes that like they could buy nice homes in the suburbs and afford things, but sometimes it came at the expense of maybe family dinners together because of people working. We were also, this generation was coming of age during the technology revolution. So I can remember, like, I started school and there were no home computers at all. But by the time I graduated university, I was sending out resumes by email. I don't know who else had this experience, but when I was in university, I had a friend of mine there trying to explain email to me. And I was like, you mean it's kind of like a fax? And he was like, no, it's not a fax. There's nothing printed, there's nothing physical. I was like, how does this even work? I don't get it. So think about that. We have all perhaps had a similar experience. And look we mostly all use email now. So this is a technology revolution, and we've been there for it. So, and I will say too about Gen X that they average about 7 careers in their lifetime, and that was something kind of unheard of for the generations before them. Generations before them, 1 career. So Gen X has been bombarded with consumerism and the so-called advantages of purchasing. That are all within our reach, but we're starting to slowly get it, right? That overaccumulation is negatively affecting us. So we're getting there. And millennials. Anybody have millennials in their lives? Yeah? All right, so they were born between 81 and 2000. And in a lot of ways, minimalism is kind of a natural way of life for millennials. Technology has almost always been part of their world in some way, and so they kind of expect to be connected to technology at all times. And you have maybe experienced this by seeing phones in hands that look like it's just an appendage. The phone is just always there, right? And even more so for the following generations. So, but mobility is the new stability for this generation. So they like to be able to have the experiences of traveling or having jobs in other places, not having to just go to one office all the time. So it can be really difficult to be mobile and change directions and change careers if you have too much stuff. so they might like to live a little bit more minimally. This is also a fairly environmentally conscious age group, just in general, and so that influences their buying habits. And they might like to know, that something has been, made sustainably or whatever, or they don't want to have too much. They also know how to leverage technology, right? So this is the kind of generation where we've had things like car shares become available, because they think, I don't need to own a car, but I sometimes need access to a car. So, and they're just more concerned with access instead of ownership. And they will also, why would you need to buy something and hang on to it for a long time when you can just get it on Amazon and it comes the next day, or sometimes same day. We don't know how they do that. So that means they need to stockpile less in their own homes, and just technology for them has made it easier to own less. So they're kind of well suited for minimalism. All right, and Generation Z. Where did my notes go here? Okay, between 1997 and 2012, these are my kids, actually, and maybe you've got some Gen Zers in your life. So they have never known a world without the internet. They've never known a world without technology. So just the way we had to wrap our heads around the internet, imagine that they'll never understand life without it. So it's a little bit odd when we tell them, we had to make a phone call. And the phone was corded to the wall, and there was one in the house. And if somebody else was on it, you couldn't be on it, right? They have a hard time getting their heads around that. So this generation was also influenced by things like 9/11 and terrorism, economic recession, some gloom and doom about climate change, and many of them were in school during the pandemic lockdowns, and they had to adjust to online learning. So that's kind of the things that have shaped that generation. They are well suited to minimalism, but many say that this generation is the most materialistic. Actually, when I looked this up, some say they're the most materialistic, and accumulating wealth is what they want to do to be able to afford really nice things. And others, however, said that this generation prefers experiences. They want to travel instead of own things. So it depends on who you're listening to, this generation just might be kind of divided. So it might be because when they want to travel, they can log their experiences on, I had TikTok written down here. They can still do that, right?
Yeah.
TikTok? Yeah, okay. Or Snapchat or YouTube. That's what they're concerned about, is that they want to be able to record the experience and share it with other people. So they're often socially and environmentally conscious. They're expecting their reflection or their possessions to reflect that. So they kind of are concerned about what that possession says about them. So they don't want to necessarily buy things that are cheaply made or supporting sweatshops. They have more of a consciousness about that. So it's often what they want to do is buy things that reflect that. So it's like a conscious consumerism is what it's called. So that's their advantage as a consumer, so that they won't buy something just because. They're going to think about it. And they want the thing that they're buying to be high quality and reflect their values. That is another reason why they might not want your hand-me-downs. If it doesn't reflect their values, they might not want it. So this is an overview of how each generation kind of has been shaped by their collective life circumstances and how they might look at possessions differently. So, and no matter what generation you're in, you can live with less. So, when you're trying to live with less, what do you do with the excess? So you can donate it to someone personally. We've had a number of people who do this, that they have something in mind and they're like, I know that this person will want it. Sometimes they do it like a selection party. If they're moving, they just say, everything in this room, come on over, friends, family, take whatever you want. Right? You can give it to a trusted local thrift shop. Some of the ones that we talked about earlier, there's a picture there of Thrift on Kent. When you're giving something to someone personally, we do not want this to be a guilt gift. Do you know what a guilt gift is? It's a gift with strings attached. It says, I value and cherish this thing, And I want you to have it, and I need you to value and cherish this thing like I did. Right? So, how many people have been given a gift like that? And you have to, like, the person comes to visit and you have to dig it out and put it on the shelf and pretend like it's been there all along. Yeah, it's not super fun to receive a gift like that. But you take it, you don't want to hurt their feelings, you don't want to damage the relationship, so you take it, you say thank you. I mean, once you have said thank you for something that someone has given you, now it's like everything else in your house. You can decide what happens to it. You could re-gift it, you could give it away to somebody else, you could donate it, you could keep it, you could store it away somewhere. You get to decide what happens. You could accidentally break it. Oh, what a shame. Yes. So be careful with those things. So it's a strings attached kind of gift. So if, let me just make sure I'm covering all of it here. Yeah, so those are some of the things you can do with it. Now, if you're giving this gift, so I'm not going to ask for a show of hands if you've ever given a guilt gift, okay? But you may start to realize that that has happened. It's okay, it's okay. If it's already happened, it's okay. When we know better, we can do better. So rather than pushing it on someone, a good suggestion is to ask, would you like this thing? And not ask, don't put all the guilt on it too and say, I've saved this thing forever for you. It's from your great grandmother and it would look so good on your shelf. And do you want it? Yeah. No, it's just a straight up, would you like this? I'm thinking I don't need it anymore. Would you like it? And then comes the hard part. You respect their answer. They might say, yes, thank you so much. They might say, no, thank you. Or they might say, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I never want to see it again. They don't have to be that hurtful. I'm not advocating for that. But whatever they say, you're going to respect their answer. And you're going to, if they've said no, you're not going to try and continue to push the thing on them. Okay, so, and the same with, if you receive it, you can say yes, you can say no. When we drill down into this, what people are concerned about is the relationship. So they might, want to give something so that they have a connection to that person. This thing is going to connect us, right? The thing is actually not always what connects us. So if the person doesn't want the thing, we can think about how else can I stay connected to this person. So, maybe it's a nephew, maybe it's a granddaughter. How else can I stay in touch with them? How else can I show them that I care about them and I love them? Because I don't need the stuff to do that. I think I've covered all of this too. Okay, so I'm going to share a personal story. This is my Nana. This is on my mom's side. She's passed away now. She had a lot of nice things. And we would go over to visit her, and we would sometimes see the nice things. Sometimes, as she got ready to move from that place and she knew she had to downsize, she had one of those china cabinets with the glass shelves. And we could look underneath and see, under that teacup, there's the name Bethany. Under that vase, Mark. We could see who was going to get what things. Right? She had thought ahead. She wanted us to have them. And so I got some things from her. Some nice teacups. That one has some German writing on it. Another teacup. A vase. These were the things that had Bethany underneath them on a little label. They're nice. They're nice. I kept them for a while. I'm like, I don't even remember having tea with Nana. We didn't ever use these cups. They were always just in the china cabinet. They were just there. There's nothing really that said Nana about these things to me. So when I started to realize that, I could let them go. And she had stopped asking about them too, which helped. But then when she moved again, and she said, "What do you want?" "I want that cast aluminum stock pot." She made soup in that stock pot. I make soup in that stock pot. Whenever I'm feeding a crowd, this is the pot. It's sturdy, it's durable, kind of like Nana was. And it just reminds me of her. I also wanted this crock. It was made by a potter that she was somehow connected to. I don't even know how the connection worked, but the two little plates that went with it, same potter, but I didn't really remember the plates. They just came part of the set. But that crock, that was mashed potatoes or scallop potatoes at every family gathering. And when we started to move to more of a potluck style and we had things at our house, she would bring this crock, usually full of potatoes. And I use this all the time, but the memory was just even of the lid clinking against the base. I could hear it. These are the things that said Nana to me, and these are the things that I wanted. These are the things I still use and remember her by. So, your legacy is who you are. It's not what you own. So maybe you're starting to think about, how could I make sure that those connections happen? How could I make sure that my legacy is not just my stuff? So, you can write letters. That's really nice if you've got good handwriting, which that has, I don't know if you've noticed, my kids' handwriting is horrendous. There's none of that beautiful cursive script anymore. So if you've got nice handwriting, consider handwriting a letter. And if you don't, type it up. Write a letter to them. Tell them what you're thinking about. Share a memory. Tell them what you see in them. Let them know what you think. You might have a phone chat or a video chat, especially if they're not close by. You may arrange to have a Zoom call if you're not sick of that. You may just have a phone call so you can hear each other's voices, hear the emotions that are expressed, and just chat. Don't make it all about you. Don't make those phone calls one way, because then they're not going to want to call you anymore. Ask about them. Find common connections. Maybe you want to record, audio record or video record some stories. I have, it's a cassette tape, which we've now digitized, of my great-grandmother telling jokes. She had that little, like, we took over the recorder, remember the one with all the clunky buttons on the front and the speaker on the top? And we put that in front of her and we said, just tell us some jokes. And we recorded her. And now I've been able to digitize it so that I can hear Gaka's voice. Gaka's what we called my great-grandmother. And I think she passed away probably in the late 80s, somewhere around there. But we have this memory. So let them hear your voice, maybe see your face, record something for them. You could also take a trip with people. You could show them your hometown. If it's local, that's great. I've heard of people also taking family like overseas to where they grew up, which is amazing if you can do that. But maybe if there's a house that you lived in this area, and you just want to take them to the house and say, this is what happened, like in the yard, this is what I remember, in the kitchen, these are the things I remember. We did this with my parents when they had their 50th anniversary. We went on a little tour. We saw my dad's place in New Dundee where he grew up. We saw my mom's place in, well, she moved in a few different places, but we saw the one on Manchester Road in Kitchener. We saw their first house together on Dawson Street, where my dad, when they lived there, 50 years before, had planted a spruce tree in the backyard. And now, the spruce tree was way up over the house. And he said, we knocked on the door and said, can we just visit the spruce tree that my dad planted in the backyard? We got some pictures. And then we went to the house where I grew up, and we had talked to them ahead of time, and they had us in. And we could look through the rooms and remember, and my mom said, oh, I always wanted to knock down that wall between the dining room and the kitchen. And they had done it, right? So really a beautiful way to share some memories with your kids and take some pictures and things. All right, so we want you to give the gift of you, not the gift of your stuff. This is how you can really share something of you, something of value, something that means something, that connection with people. Okay, seniors move. What do we do? Terry, what do we do? I'm kidding. Terry used to work with seniors move. So we do the right sizing, maybe some floor planning if the place that you're going to, you're worried about where's everything going to go, like how can I fit in, like do I need this many bookcases or this ottoman, will it fit there? We can help with that too. And then we will come and do the packing, and then we broker the move, we supervise the move, make sure everything gets to where it needs to be, and then we do all the unpacking, we take away all the packing paper, everything that we used, and everything is set up for you, and you come back at the end of that, usually it's day 2, you come back at the end of that day 2, and your job is just to settle in. So we'll take away donations using those outlets that we talked about at the beginning. And we will also do house clear outs. So if you've already moved out of your house and now you need to get it ready for sale, we'll do that. Or if somebody has passed away and you need to clear out the house, we'll do that too. We look after all those details. We offer that emotional support because we know what this is like. We know what it's like. It's overwhelming. It can be very emotional. And we're there to sort of support you. And in a decluttering process, let's say, you know, you've got a lot of memories coming up, a lot of stories coming up. We'll be there. We'll listen to them. Because you're paying us, we may, if there's a lot, we may remind you that you're paying us. And if you want to keep telling us the stories, we're there for it. If you want to pick up the pace, we're there for it. So, we're a neutral third party too. Sometimes the people who call us are the kids, the adult kids of people who are needing to move because they've tried the downsizing with them, and there's just a lot of friction in the relationship. I remember seeing my mom do this with her nana when she had to move, and it was just like pulling teeth because my mom would say things like, you don't need that. You don't need that when you're going to. Oh, just get rid of that. That's old junk, you know. But these are things that meant something to her, right? So we kind of come in as more of a neutral third party so that the relationships can be preserved. All right. What questions do you have?
Questions,
Yeah, sure.
anyone?
I've been struggling with how do I give the gift of me and still do the Swedish death cleaning because it takes time. And it's like, and so I've got a day planned out to sort and do things and get a call to babysitter, go and the experience. And so, and I'm still working on stuff because it's there's a lot, 36 years, but how do I make that balance? And that's what because I don't want to leave, we've done it for my mom so many times, I don't want to leave that.
Right.
But it's hard.
So you've got your motivation, you've got your goals,
Yeah.
and then life is in the way. And that's a good thing if you get called to look after the grandkids. That's a good thing, and you want to do that.
Or just do a fun thing,
Yeah, exactly. So instead of setting aside a whole day for what you think is going to be the decluttering work, could you just set aside 20 minutes? Or 40 minutes or whatever. So, seriously, sometimes we'll just set a timer with people. And you set a timer, like maybe the kitchen stove timer, and if you're still going when the timer goes off, keep going if you want to. Or if it's been like, oh, I didn't really want to do this in the first place, I'm so glad that timer went off, now I can sit down and have a cup of coffee. Do that. You've done something. Right? It looks overwhelming when you're trying to climb a mountain, right? But you gotta also just take little steps, and at some point you turn around and look at where you've come from as well to see that you're making progress.
and so basically it's just slower.
Yeah. It's okay to go slower. You're going in the right direction. Yeah.
Here's a thought, I don't know if you do this, but photos, you know, shelves of photo albums, and a great service would be to take all those photos and digitize them,
Yes.
and that would be a big declutter.
Yeah, so photos are the hardest. When we did our own decluttering in our house, we saved them till the very end, and it was a big process. We ended up getting rid of 37 photo albums, and we were not even digitizing. I was finding duplicates, and I was finding, okay, like, who has a picture of Lake Louise? It looks the same on the internet as it does in your photo album. It looks the same today. Unless you've got the picture of the people standing there and they're big enough that you can see them, I would say you probably don't need the picture of Lake Louise. You probably don't need the picture of the tiger at the Toronto Zoo. Tiger's a tiger, right? Unless there's a person standing in front of the cage, hopefully, that held the tiger, then you don't need to keep the picture of the tiger, right? Yeah, so I was just going to add, though, too, with photos, digitizing photos is great because that takes up a whole lot less space. There's more you can do with it. It's easier to share it with people who aren't close by. You can have it running, on a TV. You can have cycling through the photos so that you're actually looking at them from time to time instead of being in a photo album. And I have a friend who does a service like that. There's lots of photo organizers. Ginger Snaps is the name of her business. Shanna Kutzir. She is in Listowel, and she will digitize your photos. She will also take, if you started to accumulate digital photos that, hey, there's some on this hard drive, there's some on this phone, there's some on this tablet, she will take those and organize them for you and help you. And if you want to produce a photo book from those, she can help you with that too. Yeah.
It isn't a question, but I find that you have somebody with you when you're getting rid of stuff. And it could be your sister, your brother, your nephew. They're not attached to this stuff. And so they could clearly say, daughter-in-law, do you want this book? And you really want it? And that helped me a lot.
Yes. Yes, so you've got somebody objective helping you that doesn't see all the emotional attachment to the thing and can help you sort of assess, do you need this? Do you want this? Does somebody else want this?
If that's your business.
Yeah. I was helping somebody a few months ago, and she said, well, I think that my niece would want that, or I think that my granddaughter would want that. I said, let's find out. And so we used her phone to take a picture of it and text the person, say, would you like this? And sometimes it was no thank you, and sometimes it was like, yes, I really do want those antique snowshoes. They did. So then she was able to confidently set them aside for when she would see them again, and know that they were going to be leaving her apartment, right? Yeah, it's good. It's good to have that third party. When my husband and I were decluttering our clothing, so you can start with, if you're starting with a category, which is what I recommend, just any category. It could be kitchen things, could be books, could be towels, could be sweaters, it doesn't matter. Stay with first the easiest things. These are the things I absolutely love, they are staying. These are the sweaters that are itchy and gross and need mending and I just don't want them anymore. Great, those are the two easy decisions at the ends of the spectrum. Everything in between might need a second pass, might need a second opinion. So some of those things that were in between with the clothing, I wasn't sure, so I tried them on. And I looked at them and I was like, yeah, okay, I can make a decision. And the one I said to my husband, what about the sweater? And he goes, you don't like that sweater. I was like, how do you know? How do you know that I don't like this sweater? He says, look at your face. I put it on and I made a face. He caught it and he was able to help me to let go of that sweater because he could see that I didn't like it even when I couldn't see it. Yeah, other questions?
Music, albums, CDs, etc.
Music, okay. Tough category for you, right? If you love music, that's a tough category. Yeah, so how do you use the music? Do you pull out the CDs? Are they on rotation? Do you use streaming service and the CDs are just kind of now a backup if you use Spotify or Apple Music, and that's where you find your music and that's easy and convenient. Now these CDs or records are just sitting there, unloved, unused. Someone else could use them. Yeah. Can you support the artist that made them? Right? So if you bought them in the first place, great. And now you've maybe made a digital copy of that so that you can use it in more places, great. As long as you're not sharing it, because we don't have to pay for that. You've supported the artist, and now you can let it go. Did that answer your question?
We redid our basement,
Mm-hmm.
or pulled out the carpet and put down vinyl planking. I got rid of 3 bookshelves and about 25 to 30 boxes of books,
Mm-hmm.
but 1,100 CDs.
Wow, 1,100 CDs.
Yeah, I was never listening to them.
Right.
I had digitized them, and so if I wanted something, I just, from the computer.
Yeah.
So I'm going,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like the cover, but.
Right, right. Does anybody have an 8-track player anymore? Yeah? Great. Do you use it? Great. Perfect. But the modality changes, how we access the music or the books. The modality sometimes changes, right? And so if we want the new modality, it's okay to let go of the old modality and still enjoy the things we like. Yeah. Yep.
Do you know of a place that would want LPs? Because I was visiting a friend in the hospital yesterday, and her husband has since passed away. He used to be a DJ.
Okay.
So you can imagine how many LPs they have in the basement.
Right.
So I was just thinking, I could advise her. Do you know?
Well, I mean, you can call around. If there are some things in there that seem more antique-ish, you may find a buyer for that. Otherwise, I would say if they're records, they're making a comeback. A thrift store would probably love to have them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the Kent Street one would love to have them. Yeah, sometimes people, this hasn't been your question, but sometimes people worry about this thing that I'm donating might be worth something, right? So, and we hang on to it because it might be worth something. It's possible, it could be worth something. You might need to do some digging and calling around and inquiring and, you know, taking pictures of things and asking. And if you want to spend your time like that, to be able to get some, like perhaps a return, go for it. Lots of people do that, they love it, they enjoy it. We have a neighbor and he loves that. He loves being able to look at things and say, yeah, this is worth something, and he'll buy it. But if you don't want to spend your time that way, just once you've made the decision to let go of it, I would say, get it out. Do you remember, it was a number of years ago, I think it was Thrift on Kent, or maybe it was the one in New Hamburg, that painting came in. Very valuable painting, right? So the person who donated the painting maybe kicked themselves and said, oh, well, I could have had that money. But think about the good that money can do when the thrift store has it. How many people can be blessed by that, right? So I would say that's not a loss for the person who gave up the painting. That was a win for the community.
I'm not a stamp collector, but a friend of ours is.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a room full of stamps. What's the future of them?
Stamp collections. I'm not an appraiser, so I don't know. Again, I would say you probably need to check around, ask around, see. Like, so there are people who do antique dealing, and maybe if they're not the ones who want the stamp collection, they might know somebody who does. So you could, like, a friend knows a friend knows a friend who would want this. If it's a situation where nobody has the time and energy to do that, asking around, donation. I would donate before I garbaged it, unless you know the thing is garbage. We had somebody one time who really had a hard time letting go of things, and she just wanted everything to be then donated instead of garbaged. Like there was one, it was like a piece of wood that had been sort of shellacked and then just glitter paint all over it. And, you know, in the end, we want to help her let go of things, so we said, okay, we'll put this in the pile for donation, because she did not want that to go into landfill at all. Eventually that probably made it into landfill rather quickly, but because, yeah, so one man's treasure, another, whatever, one man's garbage, another man's treasure. That can happen, but sometimes we just know that this isn't going to go anywhere. If you have clothing, by the way, that is ripped, stained, like really not usable anymore, the thrift store that you use probably has access to textile recycling for those things. So,
Or Gen Z.
Say that again?
Gen Z with their,
Right, so ripped jeans, they're still going strong, yeah. Holes in socks, not so much. Yeah.
But other strikers out there, because my grandmother, an antique dealer came in and got her world old stuff, all that was really good stuff, and
Yeah.
gave it for away, and she gave it to him for a song without asking the family. And so there are people, disreputable buyers out
Yes.
there too, so I think maybe an older person should check with somebody.
You could, yeah. There will always be people who will take advantage and pay less for what something's worth. But what is it worth? And how do we know that? Right? That's a tough thing. Right? So actually there's a place in Kitchener, Colonial Acres on Victoria Street, that for the stamps. I'm just thinking about the stamps, coins, things like that. And we have found them to be quite reputable, and they will tell you straight. Like they'll maybe look it up in their catalog and they're like, well, if you had this one, it would be worth a lot, but this particular one is not. Yeah, Sherry.
I was gonna ask the same thing, if you have a list of reputable people you can trust to come and give you an honest evaluation and not, not review it. And also, is there a place to digitize yourself? Like, is there, I know that some of the libraries let you digitize photos, but I just wondered if you have any
Do it yourself.
recommendations there in terms of a reliable place, or there's a
What did I
gap.
just see? I think it was at Walmart. I saw some of those photo kiosks that you can scan in a photo and digitize it. I think it was there. I know Mazereeuw used to do it years ago. I think I saw them at Walmart for the photo question. As far as a list of places, yes. So for clients that we're working with, if they want to go ahead and do the work of trying to sell the things, we will run down the pros and cons of that with them. And then we do have a list of people that we will recommend. So yeah, I would say give Greg a call, my husband.
Because I think there are things that when we get rid of things, there's that likeness. My dad had a hard time getting rid of it. You never know when a fellow might use that. That was one of his favorite expressions. And when he finally moved off the farm and got rid of all kinds of stuff that we never ever did find a use for. And I'm trying to learn to be a little more free that way. Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm sure you're smelling the food already. And we have cabbage roll and split pea.
With no gap.
With no ham. So it's a vegetarian split pea and cabbage roll soup. So it's up there. There are gluten-free buns. The buns will be coming onto the table. They're coming as we speak. There's some gluten-free buns over there. When the dessert comes, it's coffee cake. And thank you to Gail and Robin, my wife Gail and Robin Hamill for making the coffee cakes, as well as Elizabeth, who has some gluten-free desserts. The gluten-free desserts, please leave those for those who need the gluten-free, because sometimes they taste really good, and you just want to have a sample of every one of them. So that sounded bad sometimes. They often taste really good. I'm not about to say they always taste, because I have had some gluten-free stuff that was. I'm just managing it. Okay, let me give thanks for the meal, and then we'll get started. Jesus, thank you for this reminder that you provide what we need. And sometimes we hang on to things that others could use just because of the memories. But as we were so adequately reminded, let's build memories out of relationships, not out of things, as much as we possibly can. And as we now go into this lunchtime, thank you so much for the hands that have prepared the soups and the buns and the desserts, etc. And we ask that you would participate with us as we enjoy the food and as we enjoy the conversation. In Jesus' name, amen.